Welcome to the SowGrow Marketing Council podcast. The SowGrow Marketing Council is a membership organization comprised of growing marketers who want to stay ahead of developments in multiple areas of marketing. This podcast features recordings of SowGrow Marketing Council meetings. Tune in to hear expert marketers share tips and discuss the latest strategies and tools in marketing. To join the next meeting and be part of the discussion yourself, visit SowGrowPR.com. That's SowGrowPR.com and click on the Marketing Council tab. Let's get growing. Welcome to the SowGrow Marketing Council. We are so excited to have a great group of marketers today. And we are going to talk about marketing from lots of different experts and hear from lots of different areas of marketing. So the format of the meeting is that we have some featured experts who have submitted tips, and they are going to present a 4-minute educational tip today. And then after each tip, we will have a minute or two for discussion. So this is not like your typical Zoom meeting or your typical webinar where you sit and you log on and you listen and then you log off. You get to participate. We invite you to join in. A lot of times the best tips and discussion comes out of the questions that we have from people afterwards. So it's participatory, so please join in. We'd love to hear from you guys. And as you do your presentation, please just remember to say your name and your company. And if you want to just let us know what your area of expertise is, so that way we know which part of marketing you work in. And then, as I mentioned, we have 4 minutes. So Sarah will let you know when your timer is getting close. And also, if you guys want to go ahead and put your name and your company and your contact information in the chat. It's such a great group of marketers. I've known many of you guys for years. A lot of us do business together. And so I just invite you guys, go out to coffee with each other. Like any one of the people in here is just so worth the time to just take an hour and just go out to coffee. So, make sure you guys network and do all of that. And then if you guys would like to submit a tip in the future, I'm going to put a link in the chat as well, but you can go to SowGrowPR.com/submit, and we review all the tips. And that way, if you guys want to present at a future meeting, you are welcome to do that. And we have our next meeting on March 18th, so exactly a month from today. So also put the sign up for that in the chat, so that way you guys can go ahead and sign up and get your spot for that. And as we mentioned, the meetings are recorded, and we do this as a podcast and a video series. So we have a YouTube channel and a podcast, so please sign up for those. Go back and listen to past ones. We've got some great tips. And, just be sensitive in terms of, we don't talk about proprietary information or clients or mother-in-laws or things that you don't want on video, because we do record. So just be mindful of that. And with that, we're going to start off with Kristen. And Kristen, would you like to introduce yourself and share your tip? Oh, let's go ahead and unmute. Take 2. Oh, Kristen, you're still on mute.
All right. Good morning. My name is Kristen Sellier, and I am the president of Ideate. We are a specialized branding agency, which means we help companies with their brand, and usually we're working with established companies who are looking to make a change. And my tip for today is how a logo guide can be beneficial for brands. And so I'm sharing a logo guide that we use, and I just thought walking through this might be helpful for everyone in marketing. So you understand what's important from the standpoint of maintaining consistency in terms of color and clarity across the board. When we give logos to clients, we have what we call a primary logo, and a primary logo is the one that should be used most of the time, the one that they're going to reach to and use on a regular basis. And then based on where they're going to be producing the logo, we include this area called Pantones. Pantone color matching system is the color system for designers to maintain consistency. So instead of printing from multiple colors to make one, there's literally buckets of ink. So Pantone 316 is a certain color, and that is the bucket of ink that's printed. So it's very consistent no matter where you're printing. Most of the time now, people are not using Pantone. They're printing what's called a 4-color process, CMYK. So we also offer versions of these colors in CMYK. So you'll see underneath these Pantone colors, there's CMYK, and that color palette is for printing. And so when you're gang running, printing at places like moo.com or Vistaprint, they're using gang running and they're printing CMYK. RGB is the color palette that is used for on-screen. So everything you see on your monitors, on TV, that's all made of red, green, and blue. And so each of these colors, the Pantone has a conversion for CMYK, a conversion for RGB, and then there is a web hex conversion. If there's an option for a hex number, that's great because it loads much quicker on a website than does any other color format. So that's all specified. And then the formats that we give are EPS, which is a true vector file, which can be made to be the top of a pin or big as a billboard, and you'll be able to maintain the clarity of the logo. A PNG is used a lot lately. So for example, if you're using Canva and you want to pull in a logo without having a white box around it, a transparent PNG is the perfect solution there. You can pull it in, you don't have that ugly box, and you can lay it over different backgrounds. A JPEG is also very common, and what it does is it's a compressed image, so it's much smaller, and a lot of people will use these on Word documents and email signatures and things like that. So that's your tip for today, the different color variations and format files that are best to include in a logo guide for your clients. And that's my tip for today.
That's great. Thank you, Kristen. So I'm curious, why are companies moving away from the Pantone colors?
One thing, it's a time to print. So things are very quick now. And if you're going to print offset, it may take 2 to 3 weeks to get time on the printer and then produce a significant amount. And then it's more costly because only your pieces can run through.
Oh, because you're having to do the bucket of ink versus mixing the colors.
Mhm.
Interesting. Interesting. So yeah, we have a client that does printing for displays, like the displays you see in the stores.
Mhm.
And they said that it's very hard. Certain colors are very hard to match. And so
Mhm.
even though you have a Pantone color, sometimes printing, a lot of printers will not actually get close to it. So if you have a color, let's say like the Ryobi, that's just like that really high vis color, something that's really specific, even printing is hard to match. So there's some tweaking that sometimes has to be done, even though it's, like, hey, you put in this color, it doesn't always come out like that, it seems.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thoughts or questions for Kristen?
You just kind of opened my eyes a little bit. I never thought that with Pantone. I didn't sort of knew how Pantone worked. I never thought of people just getting a bucket of pre-mixed ink for it, though. I always assumed it was always trying to match it in. So yeah, just picturing these big vats of ink in specific colors is fascinating, which makes total sense. Like I just never quite got there. I don't have a printing brain, so that was cool.
So when they're setting up the press, it's like if you have Pantone colors, they're ordering the ink, so you're paying for that. You're paying for the setup time, you're paying for the printing time, and if you don't use all the ink, it's just going to be thrown away. So it's a costly, but if consistency is number one, so for example, Coca-Cola, that red is very important. They're definitely printing with Pantone to match that red whenever possible.
Well, it helps too that they're printing a bajillion things too, so scale's
Right.
not a yeah,
Right. Scale's not an issue.
right.
They probably use that bucket of paint every once in a while, they finish it. Awesome. Thoughts and questions for Kristen? Anything else? All right, Mickey, we're going to jump to you if you want to introduce yourself and your company and share your tip today.
Sure. So I'm Mickey Mellon with Green Mellon Media. We're a digital marketing shop. Lots of website kind of stuff is our focus. And I will try to keep this to 4 minutes. So let's go. So how many of you have searched Google before? It's a bold question, I know. It's silly though, because we've all searched Google. We know how it works. You search Google, you get 10 website results. You click on one of them, you go to the site and check it out. And that's kind of how it's worked for 25 years. And it's not really how it works anymore. The problem is one of incentives. So Charlie Munger said, show me the incentive, I will show you the outcome. And Google's incentive used to be to give you the best results. Now their incentive is to keep you on the site. A fact I saw from Rand Fishkin recently, the guy used to run Moz and does other things, that says that for every 1,000 Google searches, 360 go to the open web, which is just stunning to me. I would have thought, because it used to be 1,000 searches, 1,000 went to websites. I would have thought we're down to 80%, something like that. 2/3 don't end up on a website when they go to Google because they have Google's AI results or Google shifts them to other properties and just kind of Google wants to keep them there. So that's just massive. It's problematic because a lot of us rely on that traffic coming from Google. A related problem is that research journeys no longer begin on Google, but they still often end there. So people no longer go to Google as much. And I'm saying no longer, certainly Google gets billions of searches, anything happens. But generally speaking, people don't go to Google to search for best credit unions in Georgia. they go there and just search for credit union of Georgia. They know what they want by the time they get to Google. They do the research elsewhere, and then go to Google just to see the results of what's happening. A related problem is that, as you all probably know, social media sites don't like links, other than Blue Sky, but that's kind of different. You rank better. Like there's a stat I saw I posted in there. If you post the same post on social media with and without a link, the one without a link will often get 10 times the engagement of the one with a link. Again, because of incentives. Facebook want to keep you on Facebook, and Twitter wants to keep you on Twitter, and all that kind of stuff. So if you don't have a link, they prefer that. They don't want you spreading links, which makes that problematic. So that means that precise attribution is becoming very difficult to track. If you do have a great campaign on social media and lots of people see your stuff, there's no link, and then they go to Google and type in your name, like, win, you did it, but you can't follow it from A to B. So that makes it tricky to see what's happening there. An example of us is we use Blummer CPAs out of Greenville, South Carolina. They're fantastic. I saw Jason speak at an event a decade ago, and like Allie and I were like, hey, he's pretty sharp, cool guy. So we followed his blog. He had a podcast. We followed that. And then a few years ago, we said, hey, we need a new CPA. Who should we use? Oh, Jason Blummer. Cool. So we went to Google and typed in Blummer CPAs, found him and hired him. And if he has good analytics on his team, they're saying, oh, sweet, another lead from Google. We did it. So we need to invest more in Google because Google sent us another great client, and it had nothing to do with Google. It's so difficult. The other challenge is, despite all that, Google still sends most traffic. And so, this is traffic sources on the web from about a year ago. It's still similar to now, where people don't spend time on Google as much, but Google still sends the traffic, again, because other sites don't. They don't have the links and stuff. And again, we got to be careful with our analytics, because if we look at analytics, we're like, wow, all of our best clients come from Google. So let's invest more in Google and do more Google ads and do more SEO. And that might be good, but it's probably not what happened. It's probably because you had that awesome TikTok that blew up, or you show up in ChatGPT or different things. What happened there? And then the other side of things too is I kind of feel bad for Google, because all of the chaos online, I mean, all these sites, hopefully not any of us, are just churning out buckets of AI generated crap all over the internet. And so if you're Google, how do you sort through that stuff? And Google's solution largely says, hey, big sites rank better now. We trust Amazon and Disney and stuff more than we trust Green Mellon or Credit Union of Georgia. We just trust bigger ones better. Like we have a local home builder we've worked with for years. They've been like the third ranked builder for terms like new homes in Atlanta for years and years. They're still the third ranked home builder for that now, but they're like on page 4 because they're behind Zillow and Trulia and New Home Source and Home Builders and Yelp and Reddit. And like, they're still the home builder, but Google's not showing home builders when you search for home builders. They're showing all this other stuff instead. So what happens is we're seeing a lot more branded searches. I kind of talked about this earlier. People, by the time they get to Google, they're doing a branded search. They're going to ask their friends, they're going to go ChatGPT, they're going to look at TikTok, they're going to look at Reels. If you're not showing up in those places, you're dead. We've said for years that getting people to come to your site via branded searches is key. If people go to Google and type in Green Mellon, like we win. They already know they want us. That's great. But how do you get them to want you? And that's beyond the scope of a quick tip here, but that's kind of the goal. I saw a quote that says, Google has become the reward for getting marketing right all the other channels rather than a place to start. So if you do great marketing, Stephanie, we talked a little bit about PR stuff. PR is becoming huge to have your name out there in those other places so people hear about you and know about you and then come back and pull up your site. So again, you still need a great website. Our core is websites. If you do a great job on social media, they go to Google, type your name, they come to your website, like they better be impressed or at least meet the expectations they had. So it kind of comes down to the main tip is just think about where your customers are. A lot of us in here have made a living on unbranded traffic from Google. We've done a lot from website designers in Marietta. We still get some of that, but it's less and less. So we need to be where they are. So we look to see where our clients are hanging out online and try to be there for them. And then, of course, once they see how great you are, they'll head over to your site, find you, hire you, and yay, congratulations, you win. So there you go. That's kind of more of a lay of the land than a strict tip, but I think searching for your customers, there's tools to help do that. We can discuss a little bit to figure out where your customers spend time, or again, use PR to do it. And that's where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. That's flipping so much of marketing on its head. And I feel like in the PR world, we've been there for a long time, because a lot of times you'll get something published and they may or may not do a link back to your website. And so it is that idea of you're increasing awareness, but you may not be able to track that click back to your website. So somebody may read that article in Trade Journal and then come back and do a search on Google and then find your company. And then, like you're saying, Google gets the credit for it, but really it was PR. So yeah, it's definitely, I feel like we're all having to, make sure that we're thinking like, how do we explain this to CEOs? And, how do we show them the value of things and where we put money? Like, I know, Kristen, you do a lot of this because you're advising on like, where do you spend your ad money and that sort of thing. So you're having to show like, this is actually working and connecting the dots. And so, yeah, so thoughts or questions for Mickey?
Does that thing where you put the link in the comments really or have they already figured that out?
They've largely figured it out. It's better than nothing, but yeah, it can help. And I see even people getting cute on how they even put like, you know what to look for in the comments, or because they look for the word like link in comments. So
Right.
again, they're trying not to let people leave the site. So if they can detect that, they will penalize it, as it were. But it's also a matter of sometimes I still put links on social media because that's what it makes it a valuable piece of content. So I just say I'll suck it up and have less engagement because that's more valuable that way. So yeah.
It used to also be that you were not supposed to have duplicate content. So like if you had an article, you wouldn't want to put it on your blog and on your LinkedIn articles and this. But now I'm like, well, if we put it in LinkedIn, then at least in our LinkedIn posts, we can be doing a native link to a LinkedIn article. And on our Facebook posts, we can be doing a native post to a Facebook reel or whatever. But is duplicate content a problem or?
I don't think it's ever been the problem people said it was. People always talk about the duplicate content penalty. It was never a penalty. The challenge was if Google saw the same content 3 places, they would pick a winner. And if they didn't pick you, you wrote the blog, but someone else republished it as duplicate and they were the winner, then you kind of lost. But they didn't penalize you for it. So yeah, if you follow my blog at all, you may follow it on my website, or I post the whole thing on LinkedIn, or I post it on Medium and I put Substack. Like I just want people to see my content wherever they want to see it. And
Okay.
I try to do things to encourage Google that my blog is the main thing, but if the Substack shows up first, then at least people are seeing it. So yeah.
Right. That's actually really good to know because I've been really hesitant about, I'm like, do I have to rewrite everything for every damn platform? And it's just too much time.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting.
Thank
Mickey
you.
actually posted a really great LinkedIn post from this person who was talking about, how do you win in marketing now? And with the invention of AI, basically AI is looking for common ground to be able to say, this is the content that I need to bring up to the top. And so if you do have content all over the place that says the exact same thing, like let's say, Kristen, you have a phrase that you use for your branding agency when like on LinkedIn, you have it. What's your phrase that you use? Ideate, and you say,
Oh, the manufacturers, not for it to be a choice, but the choice for manufacturers. Yeah.
right. So the more that you put your name ideate with that phrase or the phrase that you want people to be associated with, this person was talking about how that's what these AI, algorithms are looking for to say, hey, I've seen this in 100 places. So that's the information I'm going to bring forth. So it almost seems like the opposite now, that having duplicate content would actually help you because now you're having the same verbiage all over, and that's going to come up in the AI responses now. So, and that's why he was saying that PR now is huge because when you get that content out in multiple places, it's really the AI stuff is going to start pulling that because it is harder to get people on websites now. So if you don't come up in that AI thing, a lot of times you just lose those links and clicks.
Yeah. The problem again though is proving the value of that. It's like, Stephanie, I know if you do a lot of PR stuff and it helps them show up better in ChatGPT and people see the results there and go to Google, but how do you show the person that spent thousands on PR that I promise it led through this trail to get here, but you can't track hardly any of the steps. It's a big educational hurdle for sure.
Yeah, maybe we should do a session about that. Maybe we should do a session about connecting the dots, and we could take everybody's area of marketing.
Can connect them. And we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarah, can you maybe take a note on that and we can figure out if maybe we do a session on that? Because that could be interesting how we could plug in each area. Like, well, here's how you connect the dots between this and this. Because a lot of times we have to talk about how we're the top of the funnel with public relations, and we're really popping into people's worlds on the awareness side where they're not necessarily always searching for a particular company. And then you keep going down the funnel, and where the sales come in and the dollars come the door is with the sales team. So usually you don't get to track and always see that until those dollars come in the door. So it would be interesting to be able to go through that. So we'll try to put that together, and that may be a good topic for us. All right, Richard, would you like to introduce yourself and share your tip today?
Yeah, hi, my name is Richard Reimer. I'm an IP lawyer. I'm also the managing partner of Initiating Protection, a law firm that does nothing but intellectual property. My tip today is talking about using intellectual property for marketing professionals. As marketing professionals, I'm sorry I don't have a slick presentation. I guess I'm raising my hand saying, yes, I'm the lawyer in the room. But marketing professionals are constantly using their clients' intellectual property, whether it's the brands or the content from their website, whether it's things their client gives to them to use or things you prepare for your client. You're always using intellectual property. There's a few sort of gotchas that you need to think about. So imagine this scenario. Your client comes to you and says, hey, I need some more marketing in your realm, whether it's a new website or maybe you're selling them Yellow Page ads. Whatever you're doing in the world of marketing, you're trying to get your client's brand out there a little bit more. So your client comes to you and says, hey, I have this piece and this piece. And you're like, okay, I'd also like to create a new tagline for you or a new logo for you or these other items. So you have this intellectual property and you do your job great as a marketer, and you get a lot of brand new eyeballs on your client's material. Now, some of those eyeballs turn into new customers for your client, which is awesome. That's obviously what you're trying to do. But some of those eyeballs belong to your competitors, your client's competitors, that is. And some of those competitors are going to be looking at your client for the very first time because you are getting more reach than they've ever gotten before. And lo and behold, especially if it's a relatively new company getting marketing for the first time, your client learns that his intellectual property has always been infringing someone else, and your marketing is the thing that unveiled this. And suddenly you're looking like the bad guy. You did nothing wrong, but it doesn't really look that way to the client. So I'd like to talk really quickly about what IP you need to worry about and what you need to do to make sure you're not the problem. So number one, there's two different types of IP I talked about: the stuff your client brings to you and the stuff you create for your client. But from a lawyer's perspective, from what you're using mostly, it's going to be trademarks, which are the names, symbols, taglines that identify your client specifically, or copyright, which generally is going to be content from a website, or maybe images, pictures, and items like that that you're using, the imagery and the words that you're using to try to get your clients, customers' attention. Know about those things and understand that when you're taking inventory, that you know what's making your client unique, and also what are items that their competitors might want to copy. That's probably where the intellectual property is. Once you've identified these pieces of intellectual property you need to worry about, the two things I really would like you to do is ask your client, have you conducted a search on this? Do you know that it's yours? It shouldn't be your job to do a search for your client. It really shouldn't. But I do think it's your job to let your client be aware that that issue is out there, and let them know you're a really good marketer. And so you're going to have a lot of people seeing this intellectual property that's never seen it before. And you want to make sure that's not going to lead to any problems. Another thing to think about is when you're making content yourself, or when your client's making content, whether that's text or whether it's images, independent creation is an absolute defense. So you write something, it is free for your client to use. That's not true for trademarks. Trademarks being those brand elements, the images, the designs, the logos, the names, the taglines. Those can lead you to problems even if you independently create them. So doing searching is pretty important for your client. And something I've seen some of the better marketing firms do is have your client sign something saying they understand it is their risk and that they are covered. And if they don't feel they can sign that, send them to someone like me, because I don't want you to just be the good guys. I want them to be clear at the end of the day. So when you're dealing with clients and trying to get their branding out there, and notice I'm not talking about just the people creating branding. I'm talking about people who are using existing branding. Make sure that you've got your client covered. That's my tip for the day.
Yeah, that's so great. And I feel like sometimes people think they do a search, but they don't really know how to search. Isn't that something that you also help them with? Because you have processes and you know where to search and how to do a full search. Because just kind of typing in something on the internet saying, oh, is this brand name used, or is this tagline used, doesn't necessarily cover your bases. Is that correct?
That's very correct, Stephanie. Thanks for bringing that up. A search is not a search, is not a search. Now, often I will quickly, like on the phone with a client, look at Google very quick to see if I see anything obvious. And that's sort of a knockout search. Like, yes, I see the problem immediately, don't go there. But that doesn't mean it's been fully vetted. I actually subscribe to a tool that goes into all sorts of databases and brings thousands of bits of information to my attention that I use to analyze and determine is this an issue. Then I create a report that's like 20 pages long for the client and go over that. That is a search. That is, it's not typing in Google or even the USPTO. I just came from a copy from a client. It's like, oh, I know where the USPTO website is. I can look at that. Like, gee, go for it. You don't know what you're going to find, and you really know what you're doing with the information you get.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts with it, and there's a lot that you can miss very easily if you're not in it. And I think it's so important to have people in our circle like Richard, who is not a traditional marketer, but as marketers, we need outside services like that because that helps us in the process. And I even think of, like, Rebecca's not here today, but Rebecca Brizzi. So if there's a company that has an internal issue, like maybe they don't have their processes in place, they're not really running very well in terms of like their actual business is not running well, or maybe there's like internal conflict. Someone like Rebecca Brizzi comes in and fixes the problems. And that way we as marketers have an actual wonderful business to promote versus promoting a business that has internal problems that's really going to start to bubble up. We can make a business look as pretty as we can, but if there's internal issues, it's kind of the same with Richard, like having that outside legal support is helpful because, especially from a PR perspective, we don't want to have a rebrand because something happened and now all of a sudden we're several years in and you have to completely change everything. Does not look good for your reputation. So, any other thoughts or questions for Richard? That's such a complicated topic that most of us don't really delve into as much.
I was just going to add, because we work with a lot of IP attorneys as well in our business, that a lot of clients think because they have a business attorney that they've talked to, that they have gotten expertise. And an IP attorney has a unique training and skill set that's different from the person who writes your contracts or whatever. So if you say, oh, did you run this by an attorney? And they say yes, make sure you find out what kind of attorney they ran it by.
That's a good point.
Interesting.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a very specialized field for sure. That's great. All right. Well, Cordelia, would you like to introduce yourself and share your tip today?
Sure. So I guess, unique a little bit like just in that I don't sell marketing services. I do marketing for our consulting practice, and I'm the only one who does it in our firm. So I joined this group because I wanted to meet other people in marketing and learn things and get ideas and talk to other human beings. So, so here I am. But today's tip comes a little bit out of my own YouTube past, but I recently was faced with the challenge of getting us some coverage on podcasts. And the problem with podcasts, you guys can see this PDF, right?
Yes.
You're not looking at my
Yes.
whole screen?
We're looking at your backdrop.
Oh, crap. Amateur hour here, sorry.
It's okay. No worries.
YouTube documents.
And while you're looking for that, I will say that we do also like CMOs and people who are working within a company, not just an agency, because you guys have a different perspective on marketing as well. So it's great to have people that are, full-time marketers in a business instead of just agencies as well. So we're glad to have your perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I actually have a more detailed version of this that I'll post in the chat for anybody who wants it. But a lot of people have podcasts. They don't necessarily have any. It's very difficult to get an objective look at how many downloads a podcast gets and how many listens, because a lot of podcast tools simply automatically download the new episode. It doesn't mean anybody's actually listened to it. And so when you're trying to identify places to spend your time or spend your client's time, because it does take time to be a guest, you want to make sure that they're getting relevant traffic. And a lot of podcasts are on YouTube now. And so you can actually get that data on YouTube. Sherry, did you have a question?
No, I was just, excuse me.
No, that's okay. So you want to look for podcasts. You want to make sure you're searching in some kind of an incognito window, because if you just go to YouTube logged in as yourself, YouTube's going to try to customize your results based on the algorithm, based on what your own preferences are. And you want to get a more objective look. There's tools you can use that do this, but a lot of it, you can find good stuff just for free. You want to you can do a YouTube search and filter the results of that little button that has the little slidey things on it, and filter it by upload date, because you want to look for stuff. It doesn't have to be brand new, but you don't necessarily, if a video has been there for 15 years and it has a lot of views, that's not necessarily going to help your client, right? Because those views might have happened 10 years ago. So you want to see that it's a more recent upload. Check the view count, but keep in mind your niche. If you're looking to be a guest on a podcast that's super specialized area, 300 views per video is not a bad result if it's a very highly specialized podcast. If it's like generic how to market your business and it's getting 300 views, then maybe that's not a broad enough reach. So check your view count, but connect it with your niche. Then you just go investigate the content creator, look up their website, look up their socials. In our case, because we are service providers, we are looking to collaborate with YouTube content creators who are not our competition. So, accounting firms work because they don't all do valuation, but we're not going to go to another valuation firm. But so it really depends on what you do. Sometimes like marketing is a perfect example. A lot of marketers collaborate. So it's not necessarily competition isn't necessarily bad, but you kind of want to go in eyes wide open and just make sure you understand the content creator. Reach out to them, email them, propose, of course, just try to say, have a meeting, propose some kind of a win. And I'm skipping ahead a little here. I'm going to tell you that affiliate income is not a win for the creator. A lot of creators who have even a really small channel get constantly assaulted with affiliate offers. And it's just not that appealing because you still have to do all this work to create the content. And then you have to learn how to do I want to promote this thing? Am I going to make money off of it? It's just not, a lot of people think like, oh, well, you can get 10% of any sales is a good offer, and it's just not. So you want to think of a win for the channel and for the creator. So if they are like one creator we approached, he specializes in people that want to retire. So we're going to do a custom video with him on how to sell your business for retirement. Like we are doing a win to help him get views on his channel. And so that's what you want to think about when you're thinking about the win, is not necessarily just a straight up cash remuneration. TubeBuddy is software. It's like a web application. It's pretty cheap. I think it's like $8 or $10 a month, and they have a free version. But you can research titles and it gives you a score. So it'll be like, that's a 43 out of 100. That's a 99 out of 100. And you can start to see a little bit, it's okay. It's not perfect, but it gives you a score. So you can propose titles to your potential collaborator, again, that are going to be better tweaked for their audience. See if they've worked with other collaborators and see how that looks from the videos perspective. So you want to go into that first meeting with them and really be kind of like an expert on their content. And that's much more likely to result in a good collaboration. Be prepared to do all the work for the video. So you're going to come up with the title, the talking points, the description, maybe even the thumbnail, everything. You want to go in and you want to just make their life as easy as possible. And like I said, do not propose affiliate income. So, and if you guys want, I know we're kind of tight on time, I can do a little demo of this on somebody's niche if they want, but if not, that's fine. And then, like I said, I did this same list, but it's got all the details in it of how to do everything. And I'll just post that in the comments or in the chat.
That's great. Thoughts and questions for Cordelia? Those are some great tips.
Explain TubeBuddy again. So I know what TubeBuddy is. It's like usually for creating videos. So how are you using that to help find other podcasts to look for?
Well, so one of the tools in TubeBuddy is called the Keyword Explorer. And so let's just take a title example. Like I was talking about business valuation. So the collaborator, the creator that we're working with that I use this method to find, he is trying to do stuff with the word retirement in it. So I brainstormed on a piece of paper like 10 video title ideas that all had the word something related to what we do and something related to retirement, right? And it might be like how to sell for retirement, make money for retirement, sell your business today, avoid this mistake when selling your business for retirement. You know what I mean? Like it's very repetitive, right? And so then what you can do is take all those titles and plug them into the keyword researcher, and it generates a score. And it basically tells you that's a good title that is going to get you good views, and that's not a good title that is not going to get you good views. It's not a perfect tool. The best thing is when you train it with your channel and your over time. So there's a lot more nuance that you can get with a more deep dive tool. But if you're just looking to approach a collaborator with a win-win title topic idea, you can. And I'm surprised sometimes, like I'll come up with a super in-depth title that I think is going to be a home run for the algorithm. And it turns out it gets like a 20. And then I shorten it to the dumbest version of it. And that's like a 99, right? Like, so it just helps you come up with titles. It's definitely not perfect, but it's pretty manageable. And like with the guy that we're collaborating with, I gave him 5 title ideas to choose from for our collaboration. And I put the TubeBuddy score with each of them. And then we're all like over 90, but he could see like that I put some time into researching it, and he could see, they were all very similar versions of the same thing, but he got to pick the one that was like really resonant for his content.
Cool. Thank you.
That's great. Awesome. All right. Did I miss anybody who prepared a tip? All right. Okay, so I'm going to wrap us up today. My name is Stephanie Richards, and my company is SowGrow Public Relations. I work with Sarah, and we help companies get exposure in the media. And today I wanted to talk about public relations in terms of thought leadership versus brand promotion. So when we're thinking about working with a company and we're thinking about their potential to get media coverage, we often think in terms of thought leadership versus brand promotion. So when you are trying to get media coverage, it's very different than advertising. Advertising, you control the message, you control how often something runs, you control what the ad looks like, you have a lot of control over it. When you get onto the public relations side of things and you're trying to get media coverage in trade journals or consumer media, whatever it might be, the editor makes the decision as far as what runs, when it runs, what the content is, what the title is, all of these things. And so it's something where you have to convince that person that this information is relevant enough that they use space in their publication to put it out there. And so when you think of a company, whether they have a product or a service, a lot of times if you have something that leans to the product side, editors look at that and they're a little quicker to think, okay, well, you should advertise, right? Because a lot of times they're thinking that this is basically just like a promotion for your company. So the thought leadership side tends to be more educational. And so you're not necessarily talking as much about your specific product or service, but you're talking more about, let's say, industry trends, or maybe it's research, or it's something that's solving problems like best practices. So you're doing more education and less selling. So if you think of this as a continuum, you've got thought leadership content for public relations over here, where you're doing, let's say, feature articles, you're doing op-ed pieces, you're doing case studies, things like that. And then over here on the product side, you have to stop and think like, what makes the most sense for my business? So if you have a straight product, then you're going to probably be thinking in terms of product placement that would be like a gift guide, or something that would be like a product spotlight, where it's literally just saying, hey, this is a great product. Maybe somebody's reviewing something. So those are all on the product side of things. So if that fits what your client's business has and they are genuinely a straight product, it's good to keep that in mind and look for those opportunities that are really specific towards just promoting products, but it's on an editorial side. Like they actually have space in those publications where they literally do like a top 10 list of, here are the best home improvement tools or whatever it might be. And if you can even come to the thought leadership side, you may be able to get more media coverage. So let's say you can take your product, do the gift guides, do that sort of thing, but can you add a thought leadership angle to it? If you can, that can open up more opportunities. So for instance, right now we're helping Kristen with a company that has a supplement product. So they have a product, but we're going very much on the science and research side of things and the thought leadership side of things. So we just look at it in terms of, can we get coverage in both categories? Can you maximize your coverage? Can you do the product type coverage? Can you do the thought leadership type coverage? But you also have to stop and think like it may not always fit depending upon the business. But the more that you can cross over those, you probably can get maximum coverage for that. But I will say the thing that we often find is that the more product type coverage you have, or the more product that your business offers, like if it's just genuinely a straight product, I feel like it's harder to get coverage sometimes. So if you do have a very straight, like if your clients have a very straight product type business, if you could try to get into that thought leadership part, it's usually better. But sometimes getting straight products is a little bit more of an uphill battle to get media coverage because they do just want you to place an ad. So thought leadership versus brand promotion. Any thoughts or questions?
I mean, you laid it out well. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
When is thought leadership not the solution?
So if you have a product that doesn't necessarily have anything that's educational, like if you just really don't have something in depth that you can say and you kind of are very limited,
Mm-hmm.
then you're probably not going to have enough content to do thought leadership. Or if you've got something that really is not very different in the market, you're going to probably struggle with thought leadership. And so in those cases, we often recommend that you go deep within your company and figure out, like, can you actually change your product? Can you actually change your business? Can you do something that will help add an element of it that's going to differentiate your company? The more complex your product or service is, the less people understand it, the more opportunity you have for the educational side of things. The more that you have a saturated market and you have something that everybody understands, like let's say there's a technology that's been around for decades and you do it and you do it really well, but there's not really anything new that you're saying about it. It's going to be hard to do thought leadership unless you basically help your company to do something different. Like you may have to actually like go within your company and change your company internally to do something different.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. But I mean, I would even say something like, let's say you have a product like a handmade soap. You could possibly do thought leadership around that because are there skin conditions that are complicated by the chemicals in soap or something like that? So the more that you can try to do thought leadership, the better you have an opportunity to get media coverage generally. So we try as much as we can to go on the thought leadership side of things. Awesome. Any other thoughts or questions?
I was just going to give a good example of kind of an adjacent kind of PR. Like I'm not a fan of this product per se, but Dove did a whole campaign around about body dysmorphia and about women's bodies. So it wasn't really related to skincare, but it was like they picked an issue that was relevant enough, but not super controversial. Like it wasn't politics or whatever, and they did all this. And then they could have thought leadership around body dysmorphia and things like that. So that was kind of an interesting, I think. I don't know the stats if that worked for them or not, but I do remember the ad.
Right. And that's such a great example because the more product type of, like the more on the product side that you are, the harder you have to do to come up with something that's thought leadership, right? And so that's a great example of they basically kind of just invented an area that they could talk about because that's not innate to their product, right? So you just have to get really creative with it because it can be really hard to get coverage for products. So you have to be really creative with that. So that's a great example, Cordelia. That's great. I just saw Virginia log on.
Usually also with coverage for products, like if you can't do thought leadership, anything charity related,
Right.
like if they give something away or if you come up with some cause that's altruistic, sometimes you can get media coverage that way.
That's great. And it also extends the amount of coverage you can get in terms of, so let's say you get something in a gift guide. The next year, they're probably not going to put you in that gift guide. So how do you continue that story? And that's where the thought leadership piece comes in and is so powerful because the product side, sometimes you run out of things to talk about, but the thought leadership side, you can keep coming up with new topics. So like Sarah's saying, charitable, you can go down that road as well. That's awesome. Virginia, did you have a tip today? Oh, I think Virginia froze. We'll see.
Yes, so I do have a brand story, and I think that one of the things that I've been exploring a lot is that when it comes to marketing, there's different kinds of personalities. So there's personalities like a person, right? So you might know a person who's warm, or you may know a person who is really simple in the way that they talk. So a lot of people focus on the brand story from the, maybe they use a humble kind of perspective of like, this is the hero, they go through this process. But a lot of people don't focus on the language style of a story. So one of the tips for you is to think about your clients and think about their personality and then attach the narrative personality to them. So for example, if they're a person that really, like if they're a company, organization, or person who is really descriptive, kind of like those books that are in the novels, and they say, oh, everything is warm and there's a sunset and there's this and that, and they're really almost poetic in the way they describe things, then that would be a poetic brand personality. But if somebody is like a really to the point, like we do these 3 things and 4 things and we do it efficiently and that's it, then that would be a really simple style of personality, type of brand personality story. And if somebody is really like a narrator, like if somebody's kind of like those people on the radio that interview people, they narrate stories for somebody else, then that's another type of brand story. So what I've been noticing is that a lot of people focus on the brand story and they focus on the process, but they don't attach the personality style. And when we're building, say, a brand for a CEO or for a CEO of a large company or a vice president of a company or a person, when we take out the personality style for both the company and the individual, like even if you're doing a corporate communications or a letter, people do not believe it. And they don't believe it because it doesn't match the communication style of the individual or the company, and it loses effectiveness. So I just wanted to share that with you today.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially when you think of translating things to, let's say, social media or articles like that. There is that disconnect there, and it does make it easier if you do have a team of people helping you to say, this is the personality, this is the language. And Kristen, I know you do things in terms of you actually put people's names and, let's say, celebrities, and you combine them and say this brand has this person meshed with this person, and that's part of their brand personality. And it's because when you say that, people go, oh, I get what that person or that message or that brand would sound like at that point. So I think that's a fun way to put that in someone's mind. Oh, that's great. Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad you guys joined us today. This was such a fun meeting and we had such great topics. Thank you for listening to the SowGrow Marketing Council podcast. Want to be part of our next meeting? Visit SowGrowPR.com. That's SowGrowPR.com and click on the Marketing Council tab to sign up for our next event. Until next time, keep growing